You're listening to the DC Real Estate Podcast, the podcast where we focus exclusively on all things local to the DMV area. Local investors, local knowledge, local experts. Our journey starts now.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the DC Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Russell Brazil. I'm an associate broker with Arlo Real Estate.
Hi, I'm Marc Maloof. I'm a hard money lender and commercial mortgage consultant with Trias Lending. I'm a licensed real estate agent in the state of Maryland, a licensed general contractor in DC and Maryland, and I manage a portfolio of condo and HOA properties in DC.
And I'm Brian Valdivia from Trias Lending. I am a business development manager at Trias. I own a rental portfolio that we've assembled in pretty rapid fashion and are continuing to grow.
So we're going to be talking today about all things lending on the hard money and commercial lending side. I know it's a subject that a lot of you guys ask about. How can I get a loan done here? I get my DTI is too high. I can't go conventional. I get no income. And so we brought in, Mark and, Brian here to answer a lot of your questions. So, I guess, there's a few different products we could talk about, right? So you guys doing normal fix and flip loans?
Yeah. So our bread and butter at Trias, we're local. We fund with our own money is our fix and flip product. We fund that internally. Our underwriting is very differently. We tend to look at the whole picture versus a credit score of 640 only and disqualify people. We also have a host of 30-year rental products, whether that's for mixed use or the typical 1 to 4. We also have a multifamily for 5+. So really a wide variety of options where we posture ourselves as being able to help you acquire the property and do the rehab very quickly with our hard money loan, and then being in a position to help you refi out of that hard money loan into a stabilized product for a 30-year term or so.
So walk us through when a flipper, right, is looking to buy a property, what's sort of their, so they lock up the property, get it under contract, and what's sort of the process that they're going through with you guys after, they're getting that locked up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we like I said, we look at the whole picture. The first thing we're going to do is get some information on the client. We're going to ask you for the ratified contract, your ID. We're going to run your credit. We're going to look at assets in the bank. We want to see that you have down payment money. Obviously, you're going to have some skin in the game. It's always an interesting topic. And from there, as long as everything looks good on that front, then we kind of start to look at the deal itself. And to touch real quick, I mentioned the credit score, there's no hard stop. Obviously we don't want to see any bankruptcies or any, if you're not paying your home mortgage, why are you going to pay our mortgage? But anyway, so then we kind of move forward. We start to take a look at the property. What's the exit strategy? Is this going to be a long-term hold for you? Is this a flip? How do the numbers look? We look at your purchase. We look at the rehab. We have a ton of experience. We do this, everyone in our office is involved in the real estate game one way or another, whether that's from a flipping background or from the rental background or just in our office. So we look at the rehab numbers, we look at your overall deal, and we can help you determine pretty quickly if we think you're going to make any money. And believe me, if we like the deal, then we want to do everything we can to make it happen.
One thing I always say to a lot of newbie investors is, when the hard money lender tells you they don't want to lend on the deal, that's awesome. It's like having a second set of eyes on and telling you, no, you're about to fuck this shit up. Let's
re-underwriting, baby.
Yeah. Because a lot of guys get angry, right? When you won't lend to them, and no, that's good. That means that the margins aren't there. You're missing something.
So that's interesting you bring that up. One thing, and I tell this to everyone I speak to on the phone, is at Trias, we really posture ourselves as like more of a consultant, whether you want it or not. And we don't charge for that service, right? So if you come to me and you want someone to be really hands-on in the process, we're happy to do it. If you say, hey, if you don't want that, then that's fine too. But believe me, when we tell you, hey, this looks a little tight, or we think your rehab's tight or anything, then that's definitely good advice to heed.
Yeah, I just had this client, and kind of thankfully I'm not the one listing the property, but he told me he was going to get this rehab done in Rockville for $35,000. Like, well, it was cost me $90,000 to rehab this house.
Was it a studio apartment?
No, it was a 3-4 bedroom single family house. I was like, there's no way this is getting done. At least not with permits and legal contractors.
For sure. We see that. We definitely see that a lot where rehabs can be on the lower end. And we always ask, hey, what's your experience? Have you done any of these before? How's it look? Like, what's the whole package? Let's see and we have a lot of clients who do the rehab themselves, which that's always going to save you, your costs. So, we love to work with people who are doing the work themselves. No problem there.
That's very interesting because I don't know if there's a lot of hard money lenders that will allow that.
No, yeah. I mean, we do. We have a really interesting rehab philosophy as well, which I'm sure is shared by a lot of hard money lenders, but we're only going to pay for work completed. So, and that is one of our ways to protect ourselves, but also to really protect our clients. How many times have you read online, have you heard somewhere that, I gave a contractor $30,000 deposit, now I won't pick up my phone call, right? Yeah. So we always advise, look, you need to work super close with your contractor in the beginning. We advise not giving them that major deposit. And look, be there at the property. We'll release draws to you for free as many times as you want. But we're only going to pay for work completed. So our draw process is super simple. You literally just send us a video message, a picture message, and say, HVAC is in, like to get $3,000, like to get $4,000. Now, if you say to me like, hey, we finished demo, we finished this, I like to get $20,000, then we're going to go, hey, maybe we're going to stop out and check it out, make sure that the numbers truly jive,
Yeah.
But no, that's definitely a way. Like, as long as you're showing us that work is done, to us, we prefer, it doesn't matter who does it,
But that's a big point though, right? Because a lot of lenders take time to fund their draws. And, when you've got a rehab in process, when you've got a contractor you're paying, it is super important to get that money in the door. And, we funded in less than 24 hours, oftentimes same day.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends on that wire cutoff. If you text us at like 6 o'clock and we can't wire you out the same day. But yeah, no, a lot of these larger lenders and a lot of other lenders in our general area, they're not wiring. They wire their rehab draws out every other Friday, and they want to send an inspector out, and they want to go through and they want to nickel and dime your contractor. And believe me, we understand that if your contractor's not happy, the project isn't going to go very smoothly. So we want to make sure that your contractor's paid and happy. That way, it's going to allow you to keep doing more and more and more and scale.
Yeah, and as a contractor, I mean, there is so much work out there that if you just end up being unhappy with a client, I don't do this, right? I'm not advocating for this, but there is so much work out there that a lot of contractors will just say, you know what? I'm going to this guy who pays a little bit more. He pays me on time. He's easy to work with. There is so much business out there these days. It's very, very important to keep your contractor
We get
happy.
really good service from our main general contractor, and it's mostly because we pay him when he asks us to. Like, it sounds so simple, right? But a lot of people are like, oh, I'll get you a check next week. I'll get you a check in 2 weeks. And I'm paying my contractor when he asks for me for money. And I know that because I'm treating him well, I'm respecting his time. I'm respecting that he's going to pay his subcontractors. I'm getting my deals done quicker, and I'm getting pushed to the front of the line because I treat him like the businessman that he is, and he treats me the same.
Yep, certainly a relationship game. I mean, you want to really nurture that relationship with your contractor, and we want to help you do that. So
when a flipper's looking at a flip, what's a sort of typical LTV that they're looking at when they're doing one of you guys' loans? I'm sure there's multiple different products, but sort of your typical situation.
For sure. So generally, I always tell people, assume you're going to bring 20% down. We'll fund 80% of the purchase. We'll fund 100% of the rehab, always.
100% of the rehab, 20% of the purchase price. Now, in some of these properties, especially up in Baltimore, 20% of the purchase price might not be a lot of money.
About $300.
Yeah.
So I imagine you want more skin in the game than that. I would hope. If not, let me start borrowing.
So we do have a minimum loan amount. We generally want to be about $100,000 on a loan amount,
okay.
And that could be made up of primarily rehab. I mean, you're absolutely right. If you're buying a $20,000 house, we're probably going to have you bring more than 20%. But yeah, no. We also do a lot of hard money cash out refis, which might seem like an interesting topic, but imagine that you purchased a property with cash and you are like halfway through the renovation, but now you're like, I'm tapped. I need more money for rehab. We'll do that. We'll fund. We'll put a lien against the house as long as we're in first lien position. We're absolutely open to it.
That's a great point, because when I buy a property, even if I need funding, I'm going to want to buy it in cash because I want to close in 5, 6, 7 days. And one of my negotiation tactics is when I'm trying to sell that to the person is, hey, I'm real cash, not hard money cash, and try to explain that difference. So I get pushed to the front of the line. So I imagine, a lot of your clients are probably doing that. They're buying in cash, then they're coming to you and like, hey, now I need money.
So yes, we do see that a lot. However, to your point, one of my favorite things that I see in the Facebook groups all the time are, my lender backed out, I need to close Friday.
I was just going to bring that up,
my
man.
favorite post.
We hear that, once a week?
Once a week. So it's Monday. We're recording this on a Monday. If you came to me right now and said, my lender backed out, I need to close Wednesday, I'm good to go. You get me the details in time, I'm ready to close. I could close tomorrow. The fastest loan we've ever funded was 8 hours later, and I'm sure we could have did it faster. We're ready to jam.
And the reason is because we're not lending other people's money. We're lending Trius's in-house business funds. So we're not dependent on other people cutting us a check to be able to lend that money out for a premium. Everything
right, because a lot of the hard money lenders are really what they're really doing is they're going to Revere Bank or Eagle Bank and they're on a line of credit from there. So they actually have to have those draws approved by a whole nother company behind the hard money lender.
Yep. Yeah, no, we're funding with our own money and we're ready to close.
So they're typically doing 20% on the purchase. You guys are funding 100% of the rehab. You're doing draws with them. And for those that don't understand what LTV means, it means loan to value on the loan. So 20% of the purchase price, with 100% of that rehab being purchased. Then you're putting them on draws as they complete certain tasks in the rehab process.
Correct. Now, we don't have a specific draw schedule. Like, we don't force you to fit our mold. We're pretty open. If you're doing a pretty substantial rehab, $100,000, $50,000 or more, we'll ask you, say, hey, can you provide us a scope of work? Like, show us what you actually are doing, what the plan is. And we'll release it however you want. I mean, we have people who take 20 $5,000 draws, and we have people who take two $50,000 draws. So to us, it's your money. It's sitting in an escrow account, and we're ready to send it to you. Just show us your.
And then, so at the end of the project, typical rehabbers doing one of two things these days, right? Either they're selling it as a flip, and that's pretty straightforward. But if they're keeping it as a rental, then you're cashing them out into a different product at the end of that.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's super straightforward. I mean, if you do everything in house, with one lender, it's easy peasy. Yeah. We have all the background, we have all the documentation we need. It's really just a matter of transitioning, from one type of loan to another.
Absolutely. And for the 30-year product, a lot of our business, a lot of what we see in Baltimore is people, as far as people who are going to hold the property, most of them are going to be in that 1 to 4 unit, kind of band or whatever of type of property. So if someone comes to me and we're looking at a hard money deal and we see that their exit strategy is to hold it, and we see that they have a 700 credit score, and they say, I'm going to want to pull out 70 LTV. Initially, we're like, okay, your exit strategy looks great. And if you come to me and you say, now credit's a little bit more important here because that's an external underwrite, it's an external product, or an external approval. So if you come to me with a 600 at that point, because that's really the hard stop on a 30-year rental. Then we might say, okay, well, in the meantime, let's also try to focus on this type of thing with your credit, get you bumped up so we get to take advantage of the next LTV level. But yeah, no, our 30-year product is very seamless. It works perfectly. You just give me a call when you're about a month out or when the rehab's wrapping up. We get an appraiser in there generally before you have a tenant in there if we can. That way it's still pristine, looks super clean, and we kind of start the process from there.
And is that a fixed rate 30 or is it adjustable?
It is a fixed 30-year rate.
Wow, that's crazy. And on that, are you lending to individuals and LLCs or just one or the other?
Either one. We prefer to close in an entity, which is what we seem to have found as everyone's preference. Yeah. I could do it either way, though.
Okay, very cool. And what's the so kind of talking about two different products back to back here, but what's sort of your typical terms? And granted, I know terms are going to be all over the place, right? Someone with 750 credit score and $1 million in assets is getting different terms than someone who's got 610 and it's got, bubble gum in their pocket as their asset, right? But what's sort of the typical terms people are looking at for your fix and flip loans?
For the fix and flip loans, and it's interesting you say that about the credit and the assets, because so many times we see people in the real estate game who are really crushing it, people that you recognize on Facebook, right? You see the name and you're like, man, he's doing a lot. But those people, sometimes they're not always in the best situation, you know what I mean? However, a lot of times they're getting really solid rates because of their volume, because of what they're doing. Show us show us what you own. Show us a RIO schedule. So our term is 9 months. It is extendable, so like that, or renewable, rolls over. That's one thing that when I first got into hard money was like my concern was like it used to be a 12-month term. I was like, oh my god, what happens when I get to month 13? Do they take the property back? Of course not. If you're making payments on time.
Lenders don't want to take back the property.
Correct.
I think that's something a lot of consumers don't understand.
First time hard money people, I think that's definitely a point you definitely want to drive home is like, we don't want to come in and take, like, there's so many costs associated with taking that property back and then getting it to the point that we would end up selling it anyway.
Although, a caveat though, legit lenders don't want to take a property back.
Correct.
There are lenders out there that will purposely fund deals they know the borrower can't reasonably make in order to take that property back. So I think that is an important caveat that folks should look out for. But yes, legit lenders do not want to take your property. That is correct.
So yeah, our product now is a 9-month term that is renewable. Our rates are really, they're flexible. Everyone wants to hear what the rates are. That's the number one question we get on the phone. Our rates range from probably a low of 9.5% to a high of 13%. Maybe 13.5. I'm not sure. I mean, every scenario is different, obviously. And then the points, you're always going to pay points on the loan. I think our points are like 2 to 4 points. And I think if I had to tell you, if I looked at our like active open loans right now, we're probably somewhere at an average of 12% and an average of 2%.
Yeah. So you're in what sounds like pretty typical hard money rates, but it sounds like an easier process getting through your underwriting and get the draws released. And, for people that think that these sound high. 15 years ago, I was paying 4 to 5 points and 15% when I first got into this business, which is, people were like, how'd you make a profit? And I'm like, really? I don't know how I made a profit back then, but somehow it worked.
And, I think it's important to note, too, the fact that, we're not the cheapest guys out there, right? I mean, that's an important point to make. There are lenders out there who are cheaper, and we're not a fit for everybody. I think Brian, you tell me what you think. I think that Trias is really considered more of a boutique lender, than just mass volume and trying to reach anybody and everybody we can. But, I think our ideal client, our target client is those who really, are looking for a partner in this. They're not just looking for someone to cut them a check. They're looking for someone who can assist them throughout the process. They're looking for that service, making sure they get their draws when they need their money. Someone who's not going to back out and leave them hanging at the last minute. Somebody reliable. Those are really our target clients and the folks that really tend to work best for us.
Well, it's interesting because the very first time flipper or rehabber doesn't understand the value in those things, right? And like you said, you're seeing these people that show up in these Facebook groups. Oh, my lender just backed out. When you're the first time flipper, you were like, oh man, this guy told me he's going to give me 7% or 6.5%. Doesn't exist. And that's why those guys disappear, or, your deal's just not good enough for them to make any money on that. So it's the people that have been spurned who understand the value in what you're talking about here, Mark.
So I see, I think you're right across the board there. I think we're a little bigger than what I would consider a boutique lender, but yeah, that's the next conversation. So, I mean, you see these national lenders, and I'm not going to drop any names, but everyone knows who the national lenders are. And they need 45 days to close, and they're dropping the ball. If it doesn't get in by their month end, then you're waiting until the next month end.
And let's be honest, there's a lot of liquidity floating around our 2 metro areas here. You can't wait 45 days to close because people coming in over the top. Hey, I'm going to close in 3, 4, 5, 7 days.
Somebody coming in with Trias money is closing in 2 days. Yep. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it's hard to get the title work done that quick, but sometimes.
Yeah. No, I like what I is really interesting and can be really valuable is with Trias. I always tell people you're working towards our best rates. Are you going to get them the first time? Most likely not. I mean, we get some people who come in super buttoned up and they get the best shake right away. And most people will get a very good shake, even if it's 11 and 2 or 11 and 2.5. But come, I always say come correct, right? You want to come correct. When we ask you for things like we're going to ask you for your ID, ratified contract, assets, we're not asking you for things that should be hard to find. You should be able to pull them pretty quickly and produce them pretty quickly. So if you can give us and paint the picture perfectly the first time, that's always going to help you, right?
Well, and it's always too worth doing the math and convert, what is the difference between say 9% and 11% on, if you're talking about a Baltimore deal, it's 150,000. You're talking about, interest and fees that are in the hundreds of dollars difference, not even the thousands of dollars difference. We're talking about really small sums of money. So if you're telling me for $500, $700 more, I can get this done easier, I mean, that's a no-brainer to me.
You also mentioned fees as well. Like outside of origination, like some people we see people all the time like, oh yeah, they're charging me 12 and 1. And then you see the HUD and there's like $6,000 in appraisal fee and wire fee and inspection fee. And you're like, wait, I don't think you're paying 1 point.
Well, and a lot of lenders do also, I don't know if you guys do this, but a lot of add a fee on just to do a draw.
So we don't. We do have an appraisal fee because we are going to come out and visually inspect your property. So we do charge for that. We don't have a draw fee though. We don't. Every time we wire you, and like I said, it could be 2 times for your whole budget, or it could be 10. We're just wiring you.
Yeah, I've seen some lenders that are doing $500-$600 just on the draw, right? And if you're doing, I don't know, say you did a whole bunch of small draws and you did 10 draws, that's another $5,000 in draw fees.
Another thing that you can kind of work towards a Trias, once we have like a proven track record, once we've worked together a while, is we'll lower that down payment requirement. So to me in my head, instead of bringing 20%, I'm bringing 10%. But what that also means is that my ROI is increasing, right? Because now I'm putting less money out at a closing, and I'm going to have it in my pocket. So. Yeah,
because if I'm just making up a number here, but if the purchase price is $100,000, so now instead of me bringing $20,000 for that down payment, if I'm at 10, I can do 2 separate properties at once. My ROI is doubling.
Yep, absolutely.
And so that's sort of the fix and flip stuff. And now on the 30-year hold, again, I'm sure it's a range of sort of things. But what's the typical terms people are looking at on that buy and hold loan?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, although my job is business development manager, I'm very, very heavily intertwined in this product as we're continuing to grow this. We've experienced insane growth in this aspect of our business. I tell people I can get the rates as low as 3.625, which is 100% the truth. It's a teaser rate for sure. It's tough to get there. We've had maybe 2 out of 100 loans in the last month and a half closed there. But
let's talk for a second as to why that is, right? Because part of that is what credit score. Part of that is the LTV, right? You're looking at a very low LTV. You're not maxing out, what you can pull on a property. And the DSCR.
Exactly. So these lenders are going to want to be in the safest possible position to give you the lowest possible rate, right? So
because that's almost that's a Fannie Mae rate.
Exactly. And it's a fantasy, in my opinion, when they post these teaser rates. But the average rate that we see for our day in and day out cash out clients is right around 4.25, 4 1/8. Sometimes 4.5, but usually right in that band.
I tell you though, that's not bad when we're only talking about a quarter to half a point more than what I would get on a conventional rate for an investment property.
Sure. And my big sell for this, so I mentioned that I'm an investor. I use this product a lot. Maybe we'll get into that in a little bit, but I use this product a lot personally. The biggest thing for me is that this product doesn't show up on your credit report. So there's a lot of commercial lenders out there offering similar 30-year products that do show up on your credit report. I promise you that in 90 days, you run my credit, you're not going to see that I got 9 of these things impacting my DTI for when I go to buy a personal house next year. So that's a big thing. That's huge for me.
That's a big deal.
What is what's your guys' strategy around deciding not to report to credit? Is just remove one aspect, which means less work for you guys, or is it specifically a sell point to the client?
It's a sell point, and when we kind of designed the product and adopted this product, that was like our big thing. Like these investors, I mean, one of the biggest pain points that anyone has when they go to buy a house is what's my DTI? How do I calculate my DTI? And am I over my DTI? You know what I mean? So this was an easy way to go about it.
Yeah, that's awesome because especially when you're an investor, if you're an investor who's making a ton of money, if your primary source of income is being a landlord, you get 25 rentals, your DTI is just, it's fucked.
Especially if you're depreciating.
Yeah.
You're not showing any income.
You got no income coming in. You're showing all these paper losses. In reality, you're making $20,000 a month, but you can't get a loan.
Even further to your point about income, our products are no doc. So I don't need income docs. I don't need to see a W-2. I don't need to see 1099, and I don't need to see tax returns. I don't care. It's
what do you look at bank statements or?
No. So I want to see your credit score. That's going to give us a base rate. It's going to give us a starting rate. So if you have 760, maybe your starting rate is 4 or 3.8.
Yeah.
And then everything else comes from the property. If it's a single family, you get a little bit better rate. If it's a duplex, we take a little bit of like an eighth of a hit. If it's a cash out, we take a little bit of a hit. And those factors that surround the property and the loan parameters are what really get us to an ending rate. And that's how we go from being at a 3.8 to being at a 4.25 or whatever that is. And what's really interesting is like when I say 4.25, everyone out there at this point knows, conventional is 3.5, low threes, high twos a couple months ago. I look at the mortgage payments on these things, even at 4.25, and like we had one close at 4.8 the other day, and I'm still looking at like a $600 to $700 a month cash flow on this single family residence property. I'm like, man, like it's killing it.
Yeah, the
no
difference
doubt.
between 3.5 and 4.25 might be a substantial difference on $1 million property on a property in Dundalk. We're talking about a $10 difference in payment or something.
Yep.
Yeah, for a no-doc loan that doesn't show up on your credit report. I mean, that's pretty substantial.
Yep. And these can also be done as portfolios and for purchases. So portfolios, meaning I can put multiple properties together, which there's some interesting strategies that I personally take advantage of for that. And then also for a purchase. So we get calls all the time for people that believe they need a hard money loan. And this is one thing that we have a really strong standpoint about is we won't force you to pay us more money, even if we think it's a bad idea. Like if you come to me and you say, I'm looking at a property that needs rehab. Okay, hard money is the answer because these 30-year products are really for properties that are finished. They're going to pass an appraisal. They look great. They're done or are already rented. If you come to me with one and you say, hey, this property is rented, it's finished, or I'm ready to put a tenant in it, I'm not going to tell you to go into and if you have time to close, as long as you have, 20 to 30 days to close, then yeah, absolutely. Let's go right into the 30-year product. Let's lock that 4.125, 4.375 rate in and be done with it,
Yeah, that's awesome. So are those sort of the two bread and butter loans then, the 30-year buy and hold, and still kind of blows my mind that it's not a balloon payment or anything on there because there's not a lot of commercial lending out there that is not going to have a balloon payment, some sort of adjustment. The fact that you guys are doing a fixed 30 years is just kind of insane in the space. There's a few people, but usually not at these kind of rates.
Yep, fully amortized, and that is really our two products. The hard money loan, our bread and butter, we've been doing it for 23, 24 years or so, and then the 30-year stuff, we've been doing it for a few years, but we've really put a lot of effort into developing the product further, kind of beginning of this year. It was interesting in the beginning, but now it's really a seamless, really streamlined process.
Yeah. So we mentioned earlier, lenders don't want to take back the properties. Do you guys are you guys taking back any properties at any point or?
I looked at the numbers. I looked at our global numbers before this because it's always a question that comes up. I think that we've taken back 5 properties, and I think that 2 of those people died. I mean, it's not been very often.
Yeah. Because I'm always curious about that process because by the time you go through foreclosure, you're losing money on this property and usually settling it off at a discount to move it off your books quick. So I'm always kind of curious when that does happen to hard money lenders. And I'm always kind of shocked that it always seems like it doesn't come up very often. We have another friend, Jared, who's a hard money lender. And I think he had said 10 years in the business, he had never taken a property back. And especially in Baltimore, that kind of dumbfounds me with as much crap that goes on up there.
I mean, we're investors, man. We got skin in the game.
Yeah.
That's our thing. We want to put our name on something that's cool at the end, right?
Yeah. So let's pivot here and talk about what I think is even probably more interesting than the borrowing aspect is, you've got this exploding rental portfolio over the last year, which I think is pretty awesome. Tell us about that.
Sure. So, we've been buying rentals at a pretty rapid pace. We started really getting after it, if you will, May 2nd. We've closed 24 properties since May 2nd. We have a few under contract now that are getting ready to go. And I use the same products that I'm talking to you guys about. This isn't a plug. This is real. I didn't use hard money before this year, and now I use hard money to purchase, to do some value add work, and then I roll right into these 30-year products. I'm a finance guy, always was. My background is, and I think that the rates that you can lock in, you're locking in money so cheap right now that it would be stupid not to. And I mentioned that there's some potential advantages to using these portfolio loans when you put one or two together. Is they're going to use the combined appraisal value kind of as your LTV when you like start to get out of them. So if I have one property where I really hit a home run and I got like 60 grand in equity and I got another property that's a little bit more tight, I can put those two together in a refi portfolio and not have to bring anything to closing on the back end. So I mean, there's a lot of things there. We really honed in a process and an area and a type of property, and we've just been kind of laser focused.
Nice. And was there any sort of driver to going from like 0 to 100, like 100 miles per hour here, like in such a short period of time? Did you just see something in the markets like I have to take advantage of this, or some sort of life thing that triggered this? Or
so I turned 30 last December, and okay. I said in December to like a handful of people, I was like, we're going to do something crazy this year. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it's going to be in real estate. We had a couple flips, but I was like, we're going to really try to go crazy. And then I have a partner, Angelo Pagonis, great guy. We've built this together. He had a baby in April, and that was another one of the catalysts. I think a couple things just kind of came together at the perfect time, and then I saw firsthand how these 30-year rental products are working through work and how the numbers look. And I was like, I think that we would be crazy not to try to take advantage of some of these purchases that we're seeing in the market from wholesalers. I mean, for the first time in a long time, we got something under contract from the MLS last week. Like, I don't know if that means things are slowing down or what that means. Maybe it's not a good sign. But no, I mean, that's it, man. It was just a couple life events. I think both of us are mentally in the same place, and we're just kind of went after it.
Yeah. So what's the numbers on these units that you're buying typically look like? And, I know a lot of our listeners tend to be more DC focused. So these are going to be more Baltimore area numbers. So don't expect to get a Baltimore area number, in Petworth or Shaw.
Very sorry to compare my numbers to the DC guys. Believe me, I love looking at those $500,000 purchases before rehab. Our average purchase price is probably $150,000. Is right around $150,000. Our average rehab into some properties is probably like $15,000 to $20,000. We just did a 3-unit. We had $30,000 of rehab. So, our average rent across the portfolio after everything, I take out 8% for property management because that's what my property manager charges, 5% for vacancy, and 5% for maintenance. We're averaging $472 per property across the portfolio.
Okay, nice.
Positive monthly cash flow. So maybe a little lower than I would like, but for me, this is a long-term game. 30 years old. This is the retirement plan. So.
But if your repairs and CapEx don't add up to those 5% each, the cash flow may actually be better, or it may be worse, right? So,
but even so, I mean, if you're talking $475 roughly, I mean, a month of positive cash flow, that's a nice chunk of money across. How many properties is it? 24?
24.
I mean, that's a nice chunk of money coming in every single month.
I mean, that's right. Multiply that by the number of them. That's enough for most people to retire. So
I always tried to base it on $500 a month because that's the easy $6,000. Like that's the number that makes sense. And that, so we try to stay close to that. And we've a lot of the properties we've acquired, more than half of them came with a tenant existing. So I'll give away one of my little secrets, one of my little honey holes. When I was looking for tired landlords. I was looking for people who had underpaying tenants in areas that I liked, where I knew the values of the properties would be good, so I could try to acquire them with little out of pocket in the end, after I did the refi or whatever the case was. And we found them, and then I went in and I spoke with each tenant, what's your wish list? What can I do to make the property better? This, that, we did it. And then I said, okay, but that comes with a rent increase. That's kind of how these things are going to work. Now, that said, I didn't come into someone's life and completely upend their life. I never came into a tenant paying $1,100 and said, okay, you owe me $1,800 next month.
So what's a typical rent raise in that situation for you?
More than 5%.
That's not a huge amount of money, right. $50, $7,500.
Exactly. Try to get it a little bit more performing, and then get them on a more regular rent raising schedule was really like the thought process, annually instead of we picked up one where they hadn't had a rent increase since 2002. I'm like, I can't even believe
19 years without a rent increase.
So
what was the starting rent on that?
it was like $600 at the time, and I think they're paying us $1,000 now. We just submitted another increase to the.
And what should they be at?
Oh, it should be 18.
Yeah, so
it should be minimum 18. It's a detached single family.
It should be $1,800 a month, and these guys are paying $600 a month because.
I don't know. Like it's an.
I wouldn't have moved either.
They're not going to lend you 100% of your purchase and your refi and your rehab costs, and that's because they want you to have some skin in the game. Rightfully so. Believe me, it's there is a certain level of risk that comes with the strategy that I'm doing, and I'm well aware of it. So. But we have private lenders who we work pretty closely with that will lend the whole thing. That said, I do that intentionally because of when I do a refi, I intend on refining within 30 days. I want to have out of the hard money and into the 30-year product within 30 days. So I'm not going to be able to do a cash out at that point. One of the hard guidelines on a 30-year product is that it has 6 months seasoning. Now I can usually get around that at 4 months, but still, like they want to see that you've owned it for 6 months before they'll let you do a full cash out refi.
However, there's a lien on the property.
Correct. Now, if you bought it with cash, I could get you 80% out. We close in 30 days, no problem.
Because that's more akin to delayed financing in that situation.
Exactly. I consider it to be like a loophole in their process, and it's beautiful. Like we get so many people who are using a line of credit to buy properties, and then they want to pull that cash back out, pay the line of credit back, and repeat. So I'm like, yeah, we can do 80% of the new appraised value. Do your rehab, get an appraisal, and then let's get the new money out. And you can likely. We have a lot of people who are buying properties for almost no money out of pocket in that scenario. You buy something for $100, and well, you know the numbers. But no. So I don't do any cash out refis. I do strictly rate and term refis, which has zero seasoning. So as soon as I finish the rehab, I get an appraiser in there, I get a new appraisal, and we begin the process and pay the hard money lender back. And that's how we do it.
Nice.
And it's great, man. I know the Trias is always ready to close. So that's the perfect thing. Like if I make an offer, like this is where Trias really, really shines. If I make an offer on a property right now, title work in Baltimore County is taking about 7 days. My lender's not going to be ready to do that. Like he's going to be close, but if I want to try to close and make an aggressive 7-day offer, I'm going right to Trias because I know they're going to get it done. Like I know that, like I'm not even going to call my lender.
That money's sitting in the bank account, ready to be wired out right now as we're speaking. So
exactly, yeah. With my lender, like he's going to have to move some things around and I get it going.
Right, because if you sell stocks, what does it take a stock sale to clear? 3 days or something?
Right.
There's always processes to getting the money, right? So having actual liquid dollars today is harder than it sounds.
Yeah, for sure. But no, so I use hard money or private money to acquire the property. I value add at every property. You'll see me targeting very similar properties. I'm either looking for 3 1s or 2 1s, so I can add a bathroom or add a bedroom and bump that appraisal, and that's how I'm going to use the equity in a new appraisal to get my hard money lender paid off and to add another property to my portfolio.
And are you typically pulling out all your capital on these deals?
I hope so. Yeah, usually. I try not to leave very much in deals at all.
Not the worst thing if you have to, but...
Right. Yeah. Of course. It's going to... sometimes you're going to eat the bear, and sometimes the bear's going to eat you, So,
are you ever... it's always hard. So with the private lender, are you ever able to pull out more capital than you put into it?
Unfortunately not. Actually, so that has occurred one time out of the 24. And that's only because the rehab portion took 4 months longer than it should have. We held the hard money loan, the longest hard money loan that we've held. We had it for 6.5 months. So I passed the seasoning point. I got a really nice
and the
appraisal.
market was probably rising during that time too.
Of course, I bought it back in March, and now so we're
homes are 5% more valuable than in March on average, I'd say, them right now.
But Trias did help me do that. I was able to pull about a total of $60,000 or $80,000 more than my total investment.
And that was in DC, right?
In DC, yep.
And so this is also a very important caveat. A lot of commercial lenders, as well as hard money lenders, don't want to lend in the district, which is a real pain in the ass because it's generally a higher quality asset in DC too. Maybe not yours, Mark, but in general,
we're getting there. We're getting there.
We have pretty interesting rates. Like we try to do some specials for DC because we know a lot of the lenders out there that do play in the DC market are a little bit tighter on their numbers. We want to be in that game. We want to be in that conversation. So believe me, like bring me the good deals and we'll make them work.
Yeah, because the gross margins in DC are so large. Now, granted, our rehab costs are, could be 150, 250,000. If it's a condo conversion, even a lot more. But our gross margins are so large that you can fuck up a lot of things and still make profit. I've seen a lot of flips that are just terrible, where everything is screwed up and they're still eking out where everything goes wrong, break even numbers.
Mm-hmm. Or even make a profit in some cases.
Yeah, or even make a profit in some cases. But we got a flip going on right now in Brentwood, and I think Jack's going to make like $100,000. I'm sure we'll have some cost overruns. We'll probably go down 90, 85. But just think of how much room we have to screw things up and still not come out at a loss when we have an expected $100,000 profit.
Especially in this market. I mean, that's pretty crazy in this market.
Yeah, I mean, it's calmed down a little bit, but there was a while there was all right, let's just buy it, not do anything, hold it for 6 months and then sell it. I'm not advocating people do that, but
I wish I'd bought more rentals 6 months ago for sure. I mean, look what you'd be doing now.
Yep. And talk for a second. I mean, you talk about Jack potentially clearing $100,000, give or take, right? How many times do we see folks that are looking at clearing $10,000, $15,000, right? I mean,
well, especially in DC, if your margins are that close, and there are people doing tight margins too, they're paying a lot. $10,000 does not go very far in DC labor or material costs, right? So I'm surprised that there's not more people going bankrupt with the kind of deals that they're taking down.
That could also be a function of this market. I've said this for about a year now, is I think this market is really protecting a lot of people. People who are doing not the greatest flip work or are missing things on their purchase when they're purchasing and they're missing it up front, because of that rise in appreciation and property value, you're okay because a $5,000 hit here, $10,000 hit here, the market's still risen greater than that. However, when things turn around further, and I do agree there's been a slight pullback, maybe even more, those people are going to get hurt.
Yeah, I did my first 3 flips in 2003 and 2004, and I lost money on my first 3 ones. And that was with the market still dramatically saving me and going up during those flips. I just imagine if the market had been flat, and I think I lost $10,000, $5,000, and $1,000 on those first 3. Those numbers probably would have been, $20,000, $10,000, and $10,000 losses if the market wasn't saving me at that point.
And this is not going to last forever, right? I mean, this is something that eventually, we're going to see this market.
I think we're already sort of starting to see a normalizing of the market. Granted, we're in a metro area here where prices appreciate strongly every year, but I think we're going to get back to a normal 3, 4, 5, 6%, not the 10, 15, 18% we saw here over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
I think non-prime inventory, the properties with houses now are not getting 10 offers like they were, 6 months ago. They're not selling in 7 days. They're taking longer and they're selling for less, which is good. Normal's a good thing.
For sure. Definitely going to make it easier for us investors out here too.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about that deal Mark, I think we might have talked on another podcast, but I still love hearing people get this much money out of properties.
Yeah. So there was, I picked up 2 condos, in Southeast DC across the river. I think I bought the first one about 2.5 years ago. I bought the second one maybe 1.5 or 2 years ago, and, originally had a deal with a bank, where I did an initial cash out refi, and then I bought the property across the hall, renovated that one, decided I wanted to do a portfolio loan, and found Trias and was able to cash out a whole lot more money on this deal than I had put in. And the first condo that I bought, I picked up for $45,000, which was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo with a parking garage, separate, detached, lockable, freestanding parking garage. Put about 25 into that one, a little bit less, but I was all in for about 70 on that one. I was able to cash out 75 with the original loan.
So you got paid $5,000. You own the asset.
$5,000, yep. And I ended up cash flowing about $3.25 a month on that one. Then I picked up the one across the hall, did the rehab on that one. I picked that one up for $29,000, put about $30,000 into that one. So I was all in for roughly $60,000. And then I did a portfolio loan to pay off the original property and do everything through Trias. And I ended up cashing out a total of about $208,000, all said and done.
So 208.
208 was the loan, and then ended up cashing out. I think I walked away with about 120 or so, something along those lines.
After paying off everything.
After paying off the previous lender, yeah.
And you got two assets now. So you've gotten paid to own these assets. They're both cash flowing.
Yep.
They're both in DC, and it's not the best area, but it's not the worst area by any means either.
I feel safe down there. And that's my big criteria, right? I won't go into war zones. If I can't drive there at nighttime, that's not a place
Because where
I
are they?
invest in.
Are they right down near Southern Ave?
Yes.
Like near where Southern and Eastern kind of meet. That corner of the diamond.
Yep, exactly. Down in Hillcrest.
Yeah. And Hillcrest is a nice neighborhood.
Hillcrest has always been kind of the nice part of, across the river.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even know that, right? A lot of people hear Southeast and they just have this sort of negative connotation, but Hillcrest is a nice neighborhood. And actually a lot of it is, sort of larger single families, even though yours are condos down there. But it's sort of this hidden gem down there that a lot of people don't know about.
It is. And, we're seeing, areas that before were kind of no-go zones like Congress Heights and Berry Farms. We're seeing those really kind of coming up. Yeah. We're seeing condos in those places, in the mid ones to, sometimes the mid twos, depending.
Which is crazy because like 5 years ago, a lot of these condos now going for 150, say, were like literally like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
We're seeing that same thing in Baltimore too. Yeah. Like we paid $100,000 for a property, and like I'm pretty sure that someone probably bought it like 2 years ago for 35.
Yeah.
But no, Hillcrest is beautiful. I love Hillcrest. I want to buy more property down there. Obviously Deanwood's been on fire now for a while, and I think that's starting to get a little bit tapped out.
What is that street in Deanwood? Is it Minnesota Ave that runs sort of diagonal up through it? Like a lot of the storefronts used to be sort of vacant there, and now they're getting filled. They've built some right around the metro stations there. They've built out some new stuff, but it's rapidly changing over there.
Absolutely, man. And I think it's really just a matter of time before the development that we've seen across the rest of the city just makes its way over across the river.
Well, there's sort of, I think they're going out of business, but there's been sort of this joke in DC gentrification that if you follow where the DC Eagle goes, the neighborhood's going to gentrify. So this goes back to even before I was born. But back in the 60s and 70s, I think the Eagle they were down sort of like at, say, 10th and K or so, where the old convention center is, which I don't remember because it was torn down before I was here. But the Eagle went there and gentrified that neighborhood. Then they went to another neighborhood and gentrified it. Then they went to Shaw and it started gentrifying. So the Eagle kept moving places. But as gentrification happened, prices happened, the Eagle priced itself out of its own neighborhood in a neighborhood that it jump-started the gentrification of. Now the Eagle jumped across the river to Deanwood, and prices have been moving up steadily there. But I think they're going out of business. I'm not entirely sure. But that's more Marc's, seeing than mine.
Yeah. So I tell you, man, I mean, Southeast is for me a big opportunity zone. I love the Hillcrest area. I'm looking at buying property in Congress Heights, in Berry Farms. There are certain streets. 6 or 7 years straight, Anacostia has been the fastest appreciating neighborhood on a percentage basis in DC, like averaging something like over 6 or 7 years, like 18% a year or something, some absurd number like that. Yeah. Now, part of that comes from the price points 7 years ago being so dramatically lower than they are today. But still, like it's been, basically guaranteed huge gains over there for the better part of a decade now. Yeah, no, I mean, there's like I said, man, there's tons of opportunity out there. I want to buy more property. Obviously, I'm not the only guy that's buying property out there. We're seeing, sales kind of skyrocket. We're seeing prices skyrocket in areas that, like you said, a few years ago, a lot of folks wouldn't even step foot in.
You're ready to buy too now, right? You got that money, the cash out refi money, ready to rock.
I'm ready to rock and roll, man. Absolutely. So, Trias does want more of a footprint in DC. So if anybody does have loans that, they want to get processed or they want that free underwriting on, feel free to reach out to us and we'd be happy to walk you through that.
Why don't you give them your contact information, because we're going to wrap up here. So if you guys are looking to, you have a hard time getting conventional financing for whatever reason it is, get out here to Mark and Brian and get some deals done. Give them your contact info.
Absolutely. So you can reach me by email at mark@trius, TRIUS, lending.com. So Mark with a C at triuslending.com, or you can reach me on my cell phone, 301-461-9910.
Sure, man. And always reach out. My name's Brian, BRIAN at triuslending.com. Super easy.
Yeah. And then, like always, I'm Russell Brazil. If you guys want to reach me or anyone on the podcast, reach out to us at info@dcrealestatepodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to the DC Real Estate Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to contact the hosts, reach out to them at info@dcrealestatepodcast.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you access your podcasts.